Hi, I'm Reg,
And I'm Anne.
and this is Green Flags Only. Today, we're going to talk about something that's actually very difficult to talk about, and that is being given the silent treatment. Now, I'm not talking about well, you're tired and your partner is talking to you about things that you don't have a lot of interest in and you don't have any commentary. I'm talking about a long campaign of ignoring what they're saying and doing to try to, minimize them as a human being. But I'll let Ann talk about that because she's probably knows more about silent treatment than I do.
Ouch.
I'm just,
What are you saying there, Reg?
I'm just joking. I'm just joking with you.
Yeah, so the silent treatment we really want to talk about today is kind of like a complete withdrawal of communication and emotional presence to punish, manipulate, or to gain control.
Mhm.
So there's several different types of silent treatment. Some of them are they're very different from each other. So the one we wanted to focus on is the one that really is toxic and can be a form of emotional abuse.
Mhm.
So the silent treatment, it is intentional withdrawal from communication to punish. There's also something called stonewalling. So that is a complete shutdown in response to being usually emotionally overwhelmed. So if you're having an argument with somebody, things are getting heated, they're overwhelmed, they emotionally shut down, they go silent, they stop responding. That is not manipulative. That is just really them not being able to process their emotions at that time. And
Mhm.
usually, if you step back, give them some time to get back to a more calm presence and maybe change your approach, maybe not be screaming and find a better approach for them, you can work through that kind of thing. Another form of silent treatment is taking space. And this is where maybe one partner is getting overwhelmed and they ask for a temporary separation with clear intention to resolve it when either one is ready. Could be a couple of hours, taking a breather, that kind of thing, but with the full intention to come back and to reopen the conversation when things are calmer.
Mhm. Now, for me, if that situation occurs, I think it's helpful for me to gather my thoughts by, jotting, down some things in a journal or on a piece of paper, some bullet points, if you will. This is not a tit for tat, get my leg back list. It's basically some things that are related to the issue in question. And there are some things that I'd like to discuss that may provide some solutions to break the deadlock in this silent treatment.
Mhm.
But, at some point, there's only so much that you can do. But I think that taking a pause and removing yourself from a heated situation is helpful. But
I
if
agree.
but if someone isn't responding, when you're trying to make overtures to make things right, particularly when you believe yourself to be at fault, that's problematic.
Mhm. You know, the silent treatment that I really wanted to talk about today is usually intentional, and they are doing this to punish you.
Mhm.
You know, it is a completely different thing than something that is just taking space.
You know, I got 1,000 stories in,
Yes, you do.
and there was a situation in a relationship where I was trying to save money for other issues, and we had discussed that we weren't going to spend any money on any big ticket items. And I come home one day and there's a full set of furniture in the living room. I'm serious.
Wow.
And of course, I was livid. And, I'm asking 20 questions. Why'd you do this? We talked about it. And I don't get a proper response. And, it goes one day, 2 day, week before, there's an impasse. And, you know, the other person admitting that maybe they shouldn't have done that, but they thought they had reasons. My retort was, this is something that we had discussed.
Mhm.
And after having a brief discussion, we get the wall of silence again because they didn't like what I had to say.
And how did you feel when that happened?
I felt very angry. I felt that it was manipulative because I explained in detail what I was trying to save money for. That I had a goal in mind to get a house at the time, which we were renting at the time, and that every penny was important. And I just didn't think that there was anything wrong with the furniture that we had because most of it was fairly new. And I just think that that was something that was really callous. And I think it was an impulse buy. And to this day, I think that it was something that really was a precursor to the end of our relationship because, this was this was over 20 years ago. And, that check was written for almost $10,000. You know, for
Mhm.
me, that may not be a lot for you, Ann, because you're
No,
the Sultan of swing and
please.
whatnot. But you know what I'm saying? But
Yeah,
it was a lot. And I, I'd already made a lot of sacrifices to get us to that point, and now I got to start not from ground zero, but pretty close to it. So, I didn't appreciate it.
but when you were receiving the silent treatment, how did it make you feel? Did you feel resentful, bitter, hurt?
All of those. I felt minimized, actually. I felt like I felt like my opinion didn't matter. And to be perfectly honest, I thought that from the other person's point of view, as long as I got what I wanted, I don't really care how you see it or how you feel about it. You will, quote, get over it, unquote. But I'm talking about it 20 years after the fact. So obviously I never
Obviously
did.
obviously not. Did you know, and this is something I didn't know, but when you are being ignored, especially by someone that you love and value, but when you are being ignored, it can actually trigger the same brain regions as physical pain?
No, you know what? 100%. Because I started to get migraines and I had never had a migraine in my entire life. I
Mm,
started to get, stomach aches and, you know, trouble sleeping. And, this was not over a extended period of time, but it doesn't have to be, months or years. It can be a short period of time. It's just as traumatic and it's just as stressful.
mhm.
I can attest to that 1,000%. And even though things improved over time, every time I would look at that furniture, I would get upset to a
Sure,
certain point.
sure.
Mhm. Until we got rid of the furniture.
Yeah. So, an emotionally controlled silent treatment is an intentional move for control. She wanted what she wanted, and she was gonna get it,
Mhm.
and that's and like you said, he'll get over it eventually.
Mhm.
So it is, a tactic that people who are manipulative can use for that. But it does a lot of damage to the person on the receiving end of a silent treatment.
Mhm.
Other than, like I said, being ignored can cause the same feeling as almost like a physical pain in some receptors of your brain. But in addition to that, it damages trust. So, it damages the ability for healthy conflict resolution, when you're doing all the talking and the other person looks right through you, there's not gonna be any kind of resolution whatsoever. And it also fosters anxiety and emotional distance, and that's what it did for me. When I've been on the receiving end of silent treatment, it definitely made me feel anxious. I found myself, walking on eggshells, as they say, around the person,
Mhm.
not to upset them further, how long is this gonna last, like that kind of thing.
Yes.
So, for me, it was made me feel anxious and uncomfortable in my own home.
Mhm.
So, the silent treatment often shows emotional immaturity.
Yeah, because I would often think, well, how long is this going to last? And what's the end state here?
Yeah.
And I just found, that entire situation to be unpalatable because, I try to put myself in another person's shoes. And had that been me sitting at the furniture store, would I have written the check for 9 grand for furniture without making a phone call? The answer is no.
Mhm.
But that's me. There's a lot of things I did not know about human behavior at that time. But all I can say is that it made me feel diminished as a partner and a human being.
Mhm.
I I think that there was quite a bit of residual resentment that just continued to build up over the years because every time I would get upset, I would think about that furniture,
Mhm.
and there would just be something else to add on to whatever we were dealing with at the time.
So it stayed unresolved for you because it was never discussed properly, and it also diminished your worth, your sense of worth.
Yes. And every time that I would have to make sacrifices to build that bag up again, I would think about that furniture, man.
Yeah.
And I can laugh about it now because I can see it for what it is. But at the time, it was overwhelming. It was all encompassing. And, I would think to myself very often, well, what next? If they would do that, then what else will they do?
Mhm.
And we can talk about that on another
Yeah.
episode because yeah, it did get to that point.
So I wanted to look into what are the best ways to respond to somebody who's trying to give you the silent treatment. Because obviously, it is a tactic that somebody will use to manipulate you and to take power, take control. And how can you respond to that? That makes you feel better if you're going to stay in that kind of situation.
Mhm.
So one of them is the ability to regulate your own emotions. You don't have to panic. You don't have to beg for them to talk to you, beg for them to respond. You don't want to chase them
Mm,
because
mm.
all of that just feeds into the power grab that they're doing. You don't want to beg, you don't want to plead, just look at me, just talk to me. That's what they want. That's the reaction that they're hoping for.
No, no, no. I have to get into this. Is that in most relationships, you do have that runner and chaser dynamic
Mhm.
where one person is running after the other one, and the other one wants you to chase them.
Mhm.
I think in a healthy relationship, you have to be balanced. Where for me personally, I don't chase, I attract. You know, maybe that's why I don't get any dates because I don't attract a whole lot. But
Please.
but that's neither here nor there. I think that you have to have a balanced approach. Is that if you know what you want and you've articulated that, then you attract those things eventually to you. If someone is constantly trying to manipulate you to do things that may be out of character or make you feel uncomfortable, then you might want to reconsider your position because that's not love, that's not affection, that is manipulation, and nothing good can ultimately come from it.
And when you do those behaviors, when you do chase after them, when you do beg, it's reinforcing to them that, "Hey, this works. I'm
Yes,
gonna get what I want."
you, you know what? Give you a classic example. You know how your pups are. Is that is that you know puppies love socks for some reason. And you have a sock and you're trying to get that sock away from their pup, and they'll dig it into their teeth, and they will fight you tooth and nail. They will destroy the sock rather than give it to you. And in relationships, some people are like that. They will destroy the relationship before they relinquish control.
Mhm.
So, you know,
So my son tells me, and this is kind of prevalent. So when as you know, I adopted a new, very rambunctious pup, and
yeah.
he's already, torn up my sprinkler system twice and has done, damage, shoes on my shoes, that kind of thing, because he's a puppy and he's got a lot of energy. So, you scold him, no, no, don't do this, no, no. And as soon as I scold him, he comes up and he tries to cuddle with me.
Mhm.
And my son goes, he's just recharging your emotional battery, right? Like,
That's some truth to that.
he knows that he's in trouble.
Yeah.
So he's like, uh-oh, maybe I went too far this time. I better go cuddle up with her so she'll love me again.
So now, does this happen very often after the silent treatment? I think it does. I think
Yes.
there's a good measure of love bombing and fake affection to get your feathers smoothed over to a certain
To reel you back in.
yeah, just to reel you back in because that I gave you that furniture history as an example, but there were other abuses over the years that I didn't really appreciate. And when you're young you want to you want to think the best in your partner, and you want to say to yourself, well, maybe it wasn't meant that way. Well, over time, when you see that abuses happen over and over and over again, you come to the conclusion that this is just how they see a means to get things.
And it becomes a cycle, there comes a cycle where this happens in a lot of different types of abuse, but there comes a cycle where, everything's great. And then it's almost like a tension starts to build up. This is from my example, a tension would start to build up. There would be some kind of argument, explosion, chaos. And then as soon as that was over and that person realized how badly they behaved, immediately you start with the love bombing,
Hmm.
and to reel you back in,
Hmm.
that's what I experienced.
Hmm.
And you almost start to see a pattern to it. Like, okay, this is going to happen. You feel it coming.
Yeah, but in the same vein, there's no explanation. There's no real apology. There's just there's just vanilla icing that's on top of a really indigestible cake.
Yeah.
And you know, over the years you get layers on that cake with more frosting, but you really never get an explanation. And the only thing I can surmise, this is just what they have learned to get what they want. And that is a horrible way to get what you want, and a horrible way to make someone else feel. Because after the fact, it seems that they don't really think too much about how they made their partner feel.
Yeah. And again, you don't want to reinforce that bad behavior, so you're not gonna go begging, you're not gonna go chase them. But one of the things you can do also to address the situation is name the behavior. You name the behavior and you take care of yourself. So you can say something like, "Well, I see you're not speaking to me, so I'm gonna go spend some time with my friends, or I'm gonna go see my parents, or I'm gonna go see my family."
Hmm.
One of the biggest things about getting the silent treatment is it makes you feel rejected and unwanted. So take care of yourself. Go spend time with the people who do want you, who are not going to reject you.
Hmm.
Feed your soul that love, and also name the situation for what it is.
Hmm. And in some extreme cases, you just have to love yourself. You have to take yourself to a movie. You got to treat yourself to dinner. You got to find some activities that feed your soul and build you as a person. And if they want to come along for the ride, that's great. They're welcome to be on board. But you got to talk to me if you're going to get on my boat. I think it's important that in any relationship that you have these discussions and you just don't walk past each other like you're ghosts when you know there is a problem, because it gets very easy to ignore someone. you know Days go by, and before you know it, it's been weeks and you guys are barely speaking to each other, and that becomes your new normal. And it's a miserable existence,
A
because
hostile environment.
yeah, because you can be miserable by yourself. I live by myself right now, and I'm never miserable with me, because if it's something I don't like, I do something different. But in a relationship, it's not that easy. But if I'm not talking to you, or vice versa, then no, that's a horrible thing to deal with.
Yep. And another thing that is helpful is setting clear boundaries. So, and that's something personal. Like, what are your boundaries? For example, maybe for you, your boundary is okay, if they ignore my text, that's fine. I can live with that. But if they don't answer my phone call,
Mhm,
maybe that's a problem because I'm going to call when there's an emergency or when it's important or something like that. So you should know what your personal boundaries are, set your boundaries and stick to them and communicate them. I mean, having a boundary is pointless unless you're communicating what that boundary is. So you want to say, hey, look, if I call you, I know you're not talking to me, but if I
mhm.
call you, it's because it's important and you need to answer the
Yeah,
phone.
because if it's a family emergency, someone's sick, or you know pass away, at the very least, you should have the courtesy to break down that silent treatment wall and do the things that a mature adults do.
Yep.
And, and you know, I thought about this as you were talking, and as my mother was going through her transition, my sister and I were estranged, and she wasn't talking to me. And my mother wanted her to come for a visit because she was in my house at the time. And I told my mother no. I was like, if she can't respect me enough to, be civil, then she can't come into my house. And I don't care what's going on because that's disrespectful to my wife at the time and my children. And, I always use myself as a benchmark. I am not going to do something to you and then be hypocritical to the point where I'm going to do it and think it's okay.
Hmm.
So no, for that I was adamant, and that was my boundary.
Hmm.
If you can't talk, then you stay home, and I'll stay at my house, and everybody's good.
Hmm. And like I said, everyone's boundaries can be different. What are you comfortable setting as your own boundaries?
Mhm.
So it's important to know what your boundaries are, communicate them. They need to be communicated because they won't know unless you tell them, and then stick to your boundaries. You know, you do want to enforce what your boundaries are. And there may be times where they break your boundaries. And if they do, I mean, you have no control over other people's actions. You don't. But you can control how you let their actions affect you. So if they do decide to give you the silent treatment and not answer your texts, but they're answering your phone calls, that's what you said is a boundary. That's all right. But if they don't answer your phone calls, if they don't respect your boundaries, then you have to make it a decision. What are you going to do about that?
And I think sometimes people have the mind reader syndrome. Is that because you have not set those clear boundaries? They're making assumptions that may not agree with those boundaries, and here again, you have to speak out on your own behalf. You have to be your own best friend. You have to be your own advocate. And sometimes you have to be your own sheriff and like, no, this is the county line. You don't have jurisdiction here,
Mhm.
and you have to either respect those boundaries or stay in your county. And I'm a big believer of that. When I go to your house, you know, I'm happy to see your dogs. I don't say, hey, why the dog sitting on the sofa? That's the doggone dog's house. You know what I'm saying? And I enjoy them, except for Blue that
When
bonks
he
me.
throws his toy at you.
Yeah, he bonks me in the face with toys, but that's okay. That's his house. And those are things I'm willing to accept because those are your house and that's your rules, and that's fine. It's all fun. And he's a wonderful dog, by the way, guys. Yeah, all her dogs are well behaved. They're quirky.
And playful.
But yeah, but I mean, as people go, you have to let people know that you can't walk all over my boundaries and expect me to behave in the manner that you expect.
Agreed.
I you know I have a hard time with people who want you to come into their domain with a tuxedo and white gloves, and then they come to your house bare feet, unwashed, and want to put their feet up on your furniture and throw French fries all up under the counter, that sort of thing. You don't know what I'm saying. I just,
That sounded so specific, Reg.
yeah, no, I'm just giving an example, not really, but you know what I mean. I think that you really do need to set some clear boundaries, and you have to really enforce those boundaries because people will go to the border and kind of take a look and say, should we do it incursion?
Yeah.
And you have to say, no, you come over here, it's not going to work
It's
out.
not gonna work out well for you. Exactly. And then, it's also important to note that respecting your partner's boundaries are important as well. So, say, for example, they need space. Let's say things are getting heated, they need to step back for a minute, and they're saying, hey, I need a break, I need a breather, give me an hour, let me go clear my head. And you want to continue the conversation because you're hot and heated and you have a message to convey and they and they better accept it.
Yeah,
Not talking from experience.
yeah,
But
that's not going to work. Yeah.
if your partner asks for that space, it's important to have the same kind of respect and respect what they're asking for and their boundaries as well.
Mhm. And here again, as I pointed out before, sometimes when you're in that pause, it's a good idea to get some pen and paper out and just jot down some ideas, even though you may not even present them to the other party, but it will give you an opportunity to get your thoughts together,
And refocus.
Yeah. And, as you're going through the list, you're like, well, I don't want to talk about that. Or, that's not important. And you really boil it down to what you're actually discussing, upset about, or perplexed about. You know, I find that valuable because every day I may not write it down, but I keep a running list in my head, all kind of stuff. And I find it valuable. I would suggest you give it a shot and see if it'll help.
I agree. So thank you guys so much for listening. We both hope that this was helpful. Talking about these things, Reg and I have noticed that talking about these things has been extremely helpful for us. We've learned a lot doing these few podcasts that we've started with, and we're so excited to continue. We're so excited to research the next topics and talk about them with you.
And now we want to hear from you. We are looking for people to come on our podcast so they can tell us about their experience. And you can go to our website at greenflagsonly.com. There's information on how you can fill out an application, and you could be the next contestant on our show, our guest, if you will. And remember, this is not a podcast where there's any gotcha questions where we want to make you feel uncomfortable. We are really trying to learn about human behaviors so we can help you and we can help ourselves in the interim. So please go to our website at greenflagsonly.com. We got some cool commercials there and a couple of other little extra things that you might enjoy. Starting next week, we're doing a series on $20 dinners, hosted by me. And I think those are some things that
I'm the taste tester.
That's true, that you will find helpful. So thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. And we will see you next time.
Have a great day.
Take care.